Hello, and thank you for tuning in to another Unbiased Gear Review. Today, we are going to go over one of the Black Friday Hyperions from Balaguer. So first, the specs of this fine specimen. We have a one-piece mahogany body with a roasted maple neck and an ebony fretboard with just a little bit of streaking. But wait, there's more. On top of that ebony fretboard, we have stainless steel frets. On the headstock, it looks like we have 6 locking tuners, possibly Grovers, branded with the Balaguer logo there. We have a proprietary Balaguer Evergreen humbucker, black hardware, Tune-o-matic bridge. We have a master volume with a push-pull, and that's really it. This is a bare bones, no bullshit guitar. So for those of you that don't know a whole lot about this brand, let me give just a little bit of background info. So Balaguer Guitars was started by Joe Balaguer, and he's a luthier based out of Pennsylvania. He does a very, very limited amount of instruments himself in his USA workshop. But besides that, he also has his designs built for him in a factory in South Korea, of which this is one of them. This is the Hyperion model, designed in conjunction with Ryan Bruce, aka Fluff, and this was part of the Black Friday run. In fact, if you can see on the headstock here, it is number 3 from the Black Friday run. What we've got going on here is we've got, honestly, a pretty well-made instrument. It is rather inexpensive. If I remember, this particular model was $750, plus tax, plus shipping, etc. Honestly, for the price point, you get a hell of a lot of value out of this. It is a set neck construction, full mahogany body, like I said. One of the really cool things is that it is a genuine roasted maple neck. Now, roasted maple neck is just something you typically do not see on an instrument this inexpensive. I mean, there's even some factories, some luthiers, some well-known ones, who don't even offer it. But those of us that have played one before, we know how awesome it feels. We know that it does improve the stability of the neck quite considerably. And so to see it on an instrument that is this inexpensive is just kind of a nice little treat. In addition to that, another great value on this instrument, there again, about $750, $800 range with stainless steel frets. That is awesome. I've been into stainless steel frets for quite a long time. The reason why is because they prevent the friction that typically builds up when you're playing nickel frets. You know, when you play nickel frets, you hit a bend or you give it a vibrato, and eventually it just starts to fight back a little bit. With stainless steel, it stays smooth. The movements that you're doing don't really get any sort of hindrance or any pushback from the friction of the frets. That's the reason why I like them. That, and they are much more durable over time. They're not as prone to getting those little divots that you see typically build up on nickel frets over time. The fretwork on this particular guitar is rather nice. You can definitely tell that it was gone over at final inspection, which that is one of the other things that Joe does, is he does give his guitars final QC at his own shop. The fretwork is pretty nice along the sides. The frets, they're not exactly rolled over too much, but the fret edges are rather smooth. They don't really stick out at all. With the one exception being like the 21st and the 22nd frets are just a little rough. I'm going to assume it's because it was just a little bit difficult to get in a tool in there and to do the work necessary to make sure that they were filed down properly. There are other assorted tool marks on this instrument, in particular with the neck joint. My assumption would be is because there was probably a little bit of excess glue floating around, so Joe took it upon himself to sand it down a little bit more here, finish over it so that way it wasn't hindering playability at all, or for that matter, unsightly. That being said, though, you do notice the tool marks, so fair warning. Getting back to the playability aspect of it, myself personally, I really like how this thing plays. It's definitely a cut above certain other instruments that are in the price point. At NAMM this past year, where I was fortunate enough to meet Joe and talk with him for a little bit, we found Fluff's personal Hyperion at the Rev and Two Notes booth. So we went, we played it, and we were awestruck by it. That guitar, being a hand-built Balaguer, was definitely a level above similar Gibsons that were probably even honestly a little bit more expensive in the first place. So think of it like this way. The hand-built stuff that Balaguer does is like if a Gibson were really worth all the money that you invest into it. Whereas these ones, being that these ones are made in the South Korean factory, obviously they're honestly not even close to being on the same level as Joe's hand-built stuff. But, like I was telling my buddy Dan the other day, this is something that if you were to compare this to Deans or Washburns or even some ESPs that are in the same price point, it's definitely comparable, if not flat out better in terms of overall quality, appearance, and in terms of playability. I mean, there again, stainless steel frets on an instrument this cheap, that's like impossible to find. But playability-wise, I mean, I find it very, very inspiring. It definitely lends itself to quote-unquote dad rock a little bit. You get that kind of hard rock and bluesy vibe from it, and even from the pickup itself. The Evergreen humbucker, it's not exactly my favorite thing in the world, but I can see how some people would really, really dig it. I mean, when loading up the Kemper, loading up more of a classic Marshall Plexi sound, it honestly works really, really well with that. Even something more like a Fender Twin or a Vox, it still sounds really good. It sounds warm. It's got a little bit of a nice breakup happening when you roll up the volume. It's pretty cool. But for molten metal, it's not exactly the ideal pickup for it. Here, let me play a little bit. So, I mean, it's not a bad pickup, but it's definitely, like, if I had to call out something as being the weak point of the instrument, I would have to say that it's the humbucker. So my final thoughts on the matter are that this is actually a pretty damn decent instrument, especially when you consider the amount of money that you spend to get it and the level of features that you get with it. I think it's actually a pretty darn good value. Like I said earlier, I think that the pickup is a little bit of a weak point. No problem. Replace it, throw something else in. You want Seymour's, put that in. You want Guitar Marie, put that in. You want DiMarzio, put that in. Make it sound the way you want it to sound. But for a one-piece body with a roasted maple neck and stainless steel frets and Luminlay side dots, around the 750 range is kind of a really good deal. Would definitely recommend checking out this brand and checking out what they're going to be involved with in the future. So before we go, let me tell you about what I'm drinking today. This is from Evil Twin Brewing. It is the Even More Jesus. I know it's probably Even More Jesus, but I believe in Jesus. This is a 1-pint can of their awesome Imperial Stout. It is a 12% alcohol by volume. It's very rich, very creamy. You get a little bit of a hint of chocolate, but a lot more coffee than anything else. It's not a coffee stout, but it does have those flavor notes of coffee in there. A little bit of vanilla and just a little bit of brown sugar in there as well. Overall, very, very delicious, very complex, very rich. And yet, as complex as it is, it goes down really smooth. Oh, that's very good. That's fantastic. This is the kind of stout that can get somebody who doesn't like stouts into stouts. Give it a shot. So that's it for me. Got any questions, comments, concerns? Leave them in the comment section below. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and there's going to be much more videos to come. Thank you so much. Have a kick-ass one.